Welcome to the first episode of Fantastic Tones for Human Bones. This is a podcast where Mark Clifford and myself, Robert Woods-Ledoux, talk about music that we find inspiring with great musicians and perhaps others as well. In our inaugural episode, we chose to speak with our great friend Jordan Glenn. Jordan Glenn is a drummer and composer based in the San Francisco Bay Area. In this episode, we talk to Jordan about his formative years. We discuss his bands Wiener Kids and Beak. We talk about his composition work for those groups, as well as for dance companies including Liss, Fain, and Fain. We also talk about his experience playing in other groups, such as the Fred Frith Trio. Because we did not play any work samples during this podcast, we would highly recommend you take a moment to listen to Jordan's music, particularly if you are not familiar with it. I will include links to Jordan's website and all of his music sites in the podcast description, as well as links to works by some of the other artists that we discuss on the podcast. So please visit jordanglennmusic.com to find out all that you can about Jordan's music and his upcoming shows and anything that he's working on. And now I bring you Jordan Glenn. Fantastic tones for human bones.
Okay.
So we should probably introduce ourselves and pretend like we don't know each other.
It's good to pretend, yes.
Yeah. I'm Robert Woods-Ledoux.
My name is Mark Clifford.
And I'm supposed to introduce myself too?
Yes, this is our guest. Would you like to introduce yourself?
My name is Jordan Glenn.
Thank you for being with us today, Jordan.
Of course.
And thank you for
my pleasure.
Being our guinea pig here.
Happy to be here.
So
come and get me. What do you got?
It's fairly obvious that have known each other for a long time. So we're going to have to ask some questions that we might know the answers to, but
oh, sure.
I'll be good for for the pod. So I think we should start with maybe your background, like where you're from, how'd you grow up?
Oh, I'm from Oregon. Born in Washington.
Mm-hmm.
Lived in Oregon my entire life.
Eugene,
Oregon. Yep. My family is from Eastern Oregon, like kind of right up on the Washington border in like the flat desert, high desert kind of zone. Then moved to Eugene. My dad works in the performing arts kind of, or he's a stagehand. That's kind of what his, what he's done. And then my mom's a school teacher.
For like theater?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So would you end up attending a lot of stuff as a kid?
Totally, yeah. I hung out backstage for, a million different things. Yeah. That was some formative stuff for sure.
Is there a lot of theater in that part of Oregon in particular?
Well, he spent a lot of time in Ashland, Oregon, at the Shakespeare Festival there, which was a massive thing. Yeah. And he's also an electrician. I mean, he does he was in Eastern Oregon, in the town they lived in, Helix. He was everything. Like, he was the fire marshal. He was like he took care of the phone lines and dug sewers for people, and he was a grave digger and name it. Like, he was the
priest, the
maintenance man.
The doctor.
Yeah, he was like the maintenance for the whole town, which was maybe a couple hundred people at the most.
Wow. Okay.
And he's done stagecraft kind of stuff for, forever. And so then in Eugene,
but that was that his main thing? Was stagecraft his primary?
I think so. Yeah. I know he went to college as an actor, but then got more into the kind of behind the scenes stuff.
So, I mean, and likewise, was tinkering kind of something that you grew up doing as well? Like, were you encouraged to or did you end up taking things apart and exploring them, or was
Not really.
That was just more his job and you didn't worry about it too much?
No, I didn't really. I don't know if I'd say I tinkered much. I mean, I drew and stuff.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? Like, as a kid, like in an artistic sense, that's like what I was doing mainly, was like drawing and painting, and then making some movies, and then music kind of in tandem, and then as it's like, out of high school, into college, it's like, what are you going to do? And I was like, okay, music is, honestly, I was going to go into music or kind of film stuff. Mm-hmm. And music seemed so physical. And I was like, well, I don't want to lose like the chops or the kind of physical aspect of it. So I'll like study that and then do whatever kind of movie kind of studies I can on the side.
Well, I mean, before that, when did you feel like you started taking percussion seriously?
6th grade. What is that? 12? Somewhere around there.
Yeah. I think better in grades than ages.
Myself. Wait, can I ask, can we jump back a little bit? Your mom was a school teacher?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
What did she teach?
Special ed.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And to like grade school or like?
Yeah, she was working at the middle school I was at, kind of as an assistant. And then when I went to college, she also went back to school to get like I think it was a master's.
Oh.
In like that field. And then she became like kind of the head teacher at an elementary school and did that for a long time. Well, whatever, from late 90s till a few years ago.
And brothers and sisters?
Yeah, I got 4 sisters and a half brother that I found out about 20 years ago. Maybe a little 25 years ago.
Can we disclose who that is? Because I'm a personal fan.
Oh, sure. Steve Agee.
Yeah.
I don't know if Mark said he's a comedian, actor.
I don't know. I don't even know who that is.
He is big in the realm of podcasts that I listen to, and I'm a fan of his. Personally, I think he's fantastic, and I got to meet him when Jordan and I were playing in LA a few years ago. That was cool.
And a great photographer too.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm a fan of Jordan Glenn.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh man.
So wait, so how do you fall in the lineup there? Are you the youngest?
Oh, I'm the second to youngest.
Okay. And so your sisters, you grew up with them, but you didn't grow up with your half brother.
No.
Did they? What were they into? Were they into any arts?
Not really. My one sister, Grace, is like into culinary arts and stuff. She went to school for that and was a chef at restaurants and a personal chef, and kind of started her own line of foods that she's been working with, like for kids. My other sister's was into horses and stuff, equestrian things like that, kind of 4-H type of vibe.
I got some sisters that are into that.
Yeah, definitely in Eugene and Oregon in general. That was kind of that was around. We grew up on kind of I don't remember. It's not massive, but it was like a bigger than just like a suburban plot of land.
Yeah.
So we had goats and sheep and
a
couple horses.
Oh wow!
At one point.
That's interesting. I feel like that might play into some questions that I have later on about like influences, just like musical influences with your own composition. But we'll get there.
Wow, I'm curious how that'll tie back to goats.
Before we move on,
no, not that. Not like in a Pet Sounds way. I just mean like the pastoral kind of.
Oh, sure.
So when did you first play drums? Did you play anything else, or with drums my mom, in addition to being like a school teacher, also kind of like taught piano a little bit when I was really young. Not to me personally, but had a couple students. Okay.
And it's just big on music. Like she made everybody play an instrument when it came time to like enter into school, when you could play an instrument.
Like in the band programs.
Exactly. And everyone did, but I was the only one that kind of continued to do it. Because I think at maybe when you got into high school, she was like, okay, you can decide if you don't want to do this anymore. And everyone just bowed out. But I went with drums right away.
Okay.
And I think that was because my dad, going to the Holt Center, which is the arts place, the theater he worked at. I don't know. You know what? Like, okay, so drummers come through, right, to perform in different shows, and they leave sticks there and stuff. Do you know what I mean?
Like in the pit?
Right? No, I mean like, like there's a rented drum set, and it's some traveling group or something. They come in, they play their thing.
Yeah.
And maybe they'd leave some sticks or drum heads, or there's just like kind of excess stuff that they don't.
Yes.
And my dad was taking that stuff all the time, and we had a big bucket of drumsticks.
Oh, okay.
That were just kind of around the house.
So
I would, and then
Pots and
I don't
pans?
know. Maybe, probably. I don't honestly remember the details, but I've seen pictures of me little with this bucket of sticks.
Oh, okay.
You told me once that you studied with the funky primer guy, right?
Oh, Charles Dowd, yeah.
Was that in high school or was that later on?
I mean, he was the percussion instructor at the University of Oregon where I went.
Okay.
But in high school, there was like tons of camps and kind of summer programs that I was involved with that he was involved with too. So yeah, I had a lot. And my dad, my dad interacted with him a ton because Charles was the timpanist in the Eugene Symphony, which operated out of that theater. Interesting. So my dad had a lot of interactions with him.
Okay.
So
in fact, when I was in college and I was kind of, you start out as a general percussion major, and then it's like, and I was doing jazz stuff too, and I wanted to go more into the jazz stuff, because the percussion stuff was so hardcore there, and his whole thing was like, we'll do both, and it was just like so intense that I was like, I can't keep up all of this, like it's just too daunting.
You mean the classical percussion stuff was so intense? Like people were like, focused on like excerpts, like repertoire,
totally,
and then also marimba lit and all that.
Yeah, all of that. Okay. Yeah, and he's like, his whole thing's like, I'll train you to take auditions and get into being like a symphony player.
Do you regret leaving that behind?
No, not at all.
I'm just kidding, man. I went through the same thing, exact same thing.
Like, I mean, it's a common story for anyone that's like wanting to play, say, drum set or something. It's like, but that's like, technically wise, that man, I would not be the same. It was so hardcore, and like I was so stressed out, and putting in, he was like, you should do an hour of this and an hour of this and an hour of this and an hour of this every day. It was like an hour of marimba, an hour of timpani, an hour of snare drum, an hour of like your general percussion ensemble music. Yeah. And then an hour of drum set, but nobody gave a shit about the drum set. Like, honestly, he said everyone should, but there was so many kind of percussionists that didn't. And, he didn't care. Nobody, because he was not really a drum set player too, despite the funky primer.
I know, it's funny that has become like such a kind of staple in my teaching of younger people. And I came across it at one of the schools that I taught at, and I was like, oh, this is useful.
It's one of the most, prevalent books of drum set. It's really bizarre. That's not his thing.
I didn't know he was the timpanist for Eugene Symphony.
Oh yeah, no, that was his like.
He's a heavy classical dude.
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely. He had a really great soft roll. I'll say.
Did it sound like paper tearing?
Exactly.
Yes.
Yep. That was Yeah, but him and my dad. This was what reminded me of this was he. So when I was like not gonna do the classical stuff anymore, I was at that point where it's like, okay, I can branch off. It was my third year. I was going into my third year.
Yeah, and
I was scared as hell to tell him that I wasn't going to continue, and so I kind of just didn't. And at the end,
wait, your dad or Charles?
No, Charles.
Okay,
my dad didn't care what I was doing, and I was like. The last day, it was in the air. Everyone knew, because this was the moment. If you were going to do that, you'd do that, and everyone was like, "Jordan's not going to continue doing this stuff. He's going to play drum set." And he just took me out back. Charles did, and was like, "So I want to talk to you about your junior recital. What I imagine you doing. You're going to play this entire box, suite, and you're going to do all these things." And he was kind of describing what my recital next year was going to be like, basically pressuring me to say like, he knew it, and he was just like, all right, this is my plan for you. Like, what do you think?
Oh, man.
And I had to say, well, I'm not going to come back. And he said, let me tell you why that's a bad idea. And he started listening to all this stuff, and it got real gnarly. And then he was like, you need to have a sit down with me and your dad.
Oh, my God.
And I was like, oh, no. And I left there. It was just crazy. The people I was studying with, my friends, after I talked with them, were like, so what happened? What what? And I was like, well, it looks like I'm coming back next year. I was totally like, Charles has me. I'm not leaving. And the guy shook me and was like, you don't have to listen to him. You can do whatever you want. And I was like, oh, really? And so when I talked to my dad, and I was like, Charles wants to have a sit down with you and me, and he goes, I'm not doing that. That's all my dad said, and walked away. That was it. He just goes, I'm not doing that. And I was just like, okay, well, I guess. And then I just avoided him the next year. Like, I'd see him coming down the hall, and I'd go the opposite.
Yeah. Did you? You were still in school, but you dropped out of the program, or?
Yeah, no, I just went into jazz studies, and so I wasn't required then to take the percussion stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I didn't really have to be in like the same room with him.
This is so interesting because I almost did the same thing, but they talked me out of it at the school that I went to. Lynn Baker, the head of the jazz studies, I told him that I wanted out of classical percussion. He's like, stay in that. And then he still had me involved in all the jazz stuff as much as possible.
I think part of this is that people need to have their seats in their orchestra filled.
Yeah, maybe.
In the school orchestra?
Yeah, like they're always looking. At least in my experience, there was always like, we need percussionists for this orchestra and this ensemble and this ensemble. It's like they have to fill it, and the heads of each department are responsible for filling the seats.
Oh, really?
Yeah, or at least at the schools that I went to. So,
who knows? I think some of it too was just like, when he was about weeding out the weak and stuff like that, and it was a whole
sounds cool, dude.
I mean, it was just that the environment was very like just survival. You were just like trying to keep up on everything, and you didn't want to mess up anything, and you were just trying to like hold it together.
How hilarious would it be if I brought him in right now?
Well, unfortunately, he passed
we have
away.
A special guest. Oh, really?
Yeah, he passed away a few years ago.
Oh.
Well, that'd be all right.
Way to go, Bob.
Well, yeah, I mean, I can relate to that environment, and I think just my personal experience, my reaction was to like stop playing snare and just focus on marimba, and then get fully into vibraphone and piano and take all of that on. So, to his credit, if you do want to seriously pursue a career in symphonic playing, it's just like that.
Yeah.
And that wasn't my hang, and I don't think it was yours either.
No.
So who was the jazz instructor that you were working with at UG?
Oh, Steve Owens is the head of, I don't know if he actually still is now. I don't know, but he was the head of the program there, saxophone player. And you learned, the normal stuff. It'd take kind of piano functionality. That's what it was called. Piano functionality class. And, jazz arranging and stuff like that. And
was there a drum set teacher?
There was a guy from Portland named Gary Hobbs who came down to Eugene once or twice a week. He's great. He was really cool.
That's cool. And so at this point in college, like, what are you checking out? What are you starting to immerse yourself in listening-wise?
I mean, it was the normal stuff like John Coltrane and Miles Davis and stuff like that. But there was also Maria Schneider, big band stuff, and Thad Jones and Mel Lewis, that and Ellington, and but there was a guy when I came in as a freshman. There was a guy who was a senior named Kyle Santa, guitarist, who. God, he was the one, and still, like, my whole time there, he was like one of the very few jazz people that was nice and was like genuinely like not like, hey man, you're whatever, you're dragging or you're whatever. Who, you know what I mean? The shit they want to nitpick and like,
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And there's a term for it. It's the jazz hole,
Right.
Like it's so prevalent, especially in that scene, that realm, like college younger cats, just because no one has any idea what's going on.
It's just Yeah, I mean, the classical stuff, like the stress of that translated to then like, oh my God, can I play these standards in 7/8 or something dumb? You know what I mean? Like where you're just like, and can I do it fast? And can I sound like the Brad Meldau trio or, whatever the kind of the hot thing was at that moment. But Kyle was like, I don't know. He was good and he was very open to stuff. And he actually exposed me to some drummers and music that I had, like Jim Black and Joey Barron and some more like modern drummers that were doing like far out stuff that when I listened to, I was like, what the hell? First of all, I just didn't understand, what I was hearing musically, but also just the sounds. I was like, I don't know what's going on here. And I have no idea how they're doing anything. I'm just hearing all this crazy shit. And
wait, so would the Bloodcount band be an example of that?
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Like, okay. Because
I love
go ahead.
Sorry. I love that you said like what you just said, where it's like, I don't know what's going on, but you're fascinated by it. Cause that's been my experience for every like major musical influence that I've had. It's always started that way. Like, I don't know what this is. I can't tell what's going on. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Also like when one of my closest friends when I started playing music in 6th grade, he was the bass player and like tuba player and trumpet player in the same. We went to school together through high school, and we were just like best friends. And he, in high school and kind of into college, he didn't go to college, but like he was like got into anarchy and punk rock and stuff, and then like kind of dropped out of high school, got a GED, but like we stayed close friends. And I mean, what's crazy to think about like stuff like Sun Ra or things like that. I'd never, I was like, I don't know anything. He had all these records. He was playing Ornette Coleman and stuff like that for me, or Albert Eiler. And
wait, in like middle school?
High school and college and stuff.
Oh, wow.
And I was like always kind of like envious of that whole crowd he hung with. And I was like, oh, this is so, and I went to some of those shows later, like that were just, like insanely messed up and loud and kind of fucked up, and people were just, like on drugs and all sorts of crazy theatrics on stage. And I kind of envied like that type of vibe, because I'm in academic music, and that's all I did that. And then there was my friends scene here, which I wasn't a part of, and I felt like such a dork, but I kind of dug that. So like the Bloodcount stuff, why I'm bringing this up is that to me was kind of this like, I don't know if you guys listen to any of that Unwound 3-disc, any of that, just like even sampled to the sound of it. It's all like live recordings that sound insanely fucked up. Like that's kind of a stretch. I mean, it just sounds distorted, and it's like a microphone in a room.
Yeah, but the energy is astonishing.
Yeah.
And listening to Jim Black's playing on that is just like what you described. Like I cannot fathom how the movement like that happens on a drum set. When I listen to that, it's absolutely mind-blowing.
And the timbres and the different kind of like, in my mind, I pictured what the drum set and what he looked like, right?
Yeah.
And I couldn't have been more wrong when someone kind of described him, or I got to finally see a video or see him live or a picture or something. I was like, whoa, wow.
Yeah.
Because it's, he has such an array of like things with him and sounds, and the way they're all kind of incorporated, and the way he's like manipulating just a single drum or a cymbal or something. It's just like, it's all over the place. And then those recordings sound really distorted and kind of crazy. And sometimes, so I was picturing this guy that was like, 8 feet tall and like arms like tree trunks kind of thing. Because it sounds like really massive sometimes, and like overbearing, like it covers up everybody. It just goes. And so I was like, what the fuck is going on here? This is insane. I just didn't like, you know what I mean? I just couldn't imagine.
Right.
But it's exciting. And it kind of bridged that gap between like, oh, here's like, you know what I mean? It seems obvious now, like people playing like saxophones and kind of hardcore bands and stuff. But like, I just was like, there's no, the jazz and this whole other scene of kind of more rough and tumble music is like, it didn't click with me. It was like jazz was academic and was
the other
over
thing
here.
that stood out to me, though, is like the fact that, he was doing what he was doing forced Tim and Chris to sustain energy like I can't imagine doing like on the Vibes or anything. It just seems like exhausting, those solos, It's really it's pretty mind-blowing,
And and like, tunes that last for like 20 minutes each. Mm-hmm. I just was like, I couldn't figure,
Yeah.
And the way the writing and the improvising kind of, it's easier to hear now, but like at the time, I didn't understand what, like, it sounds like people improvising or this is free, right? No, there's just, people are just improvising. And then before you know it, there's like unisons happening. And I just couldn't, like, I'd have to go backtrack and try to like reconstruct what's going on.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So I learned a lot listening to that stuff, just like, whoa. And then when I went to Mills, like I didn't understand.
Let's pause.
Sorry, I know I'm skipping over some stuff.
How did you find your way to Mills, actually?
Oh, right. That's, so I graduated from the University of Oregon in 2003 after being there 5 years. And then just hung out in Eugene for 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
And that's when I got into actually like playing in bands that were not school bands.
Yeah.
And I was doing jazz stuff, like at restaurants and things like that. And I'll at the same time starting to play in kind of like garage bands type, thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so yeah, I'm introduced into all these other musicians that I didn't really know, but kind of a cool scene of like rock and roll and stuff like that and I was just this person that could, technically was pretty good and could kind of do these things, but I wasn't like, I don't know, I wish I could do it again because I feel like I'd listen to more of that music and I understand it a little better, but I was like a artsy jazz drummer trying to play like in a Neil Young type sounding group or something, and it was just like a weird kind of thing. But so I was doing that, and then I was getting called less and less for the jazz stuff because I was prioritizing the rock stuff, and then I'm running out of money, and I'm just going, I'm like living in filth in Eugene, and I'm kind of thinking to myself like I have some ambitions, and I want to be like, I want to like be somewhere else, but I was too scared to go to New York. Like, see, I'm still, what is this? I'm in my early 20s, and I'm in the same town I grew up in, and I didn't really have the guts to go to New York, which I knew was like the place, like for what I was interested in. I was like, that would be the place. But I was also looking at Seattle because there was musicians I knew of there, not knew personally, but listen to their records, and then the Bay Area too.
Bill and Kong Vu were up there at that time.
Yeah.
I mean that. Oh, and also Chris Speed was from there. He was probably already out of there at that point.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Yeah, but then I was aware of like Ben Goldberg and John Schott.
Yeah.
And here in the Bay Area, and then I was trying to figure out what to do, and I kind of knew. I knew Chess Smith, the drummer. Mm-hmm. Because he spent some time in Eugene.
Okay.
In fact, he's older than me, but he went to the University of Oregon and I think studied like something like philosophy, but was friends with some people in the music department and kind of played with a couple of them. And so then when I was coming up, I started to meet the people that he had played with. And they would say like, "Oh, do you know Chess? You should check out Chess. You'd like his music." And then he'd come through touring, and I'd see him a few times. Mm-hmm. And then he was kind of bouncing around and touring a lot. And then I think he was in LA for a minute, and then he went to New York. And
So wait, Chess Smith played in Mr. Bungle.
Yes,
and Secret Chiefs 3.
Exactly. Yeah.
Amongst other things.
Yeah, a million things. Yeah.
Yeah.
But he was kind of somebody like who's like path, I was like, what did he do? And I found out he went to Mills. And so I was looking into Mills, and I was like, okay, this looks kind of cool. And I applied to like other places, but they didn't really have I was mainly a performer, and I'm interested in improvising. And so there wasn't really that except for at Mills. I tried some other places as like a composer or like ethnomusicologist, but that wasn't really. I wasn't surprised when I did.
So wait, hold on. Were you composing already at that time, or what?
Not really. Maybe a tiny bit, but not. No, I would say no.
Really?
Yeah.
So even in Eugene, you weren't writing that much.
I mean, I did a little bit, but I didn't really know what I was doing, I would say. Well, I still don't know what I'm doing, but it was like there was like maybe one or two pieces that survived that time that got absorbed into Wiener Kids music.
Okay, so this is interesting, and maybe I'm jumping too far ahead, but like, so your earliest writing styles would be closest to what happened in the band Wiener Kids. Would you say that that's true? Stylistically?
Stylistically, sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
yeah.
So you know Chess Smith, and based on your interactions with him, you decide to go to Mills?
Well, more not so much my interactions with him, but just kind of seeing what he did.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, the Bay Area looks cool, and it looks like because I thought going to school would be the easiest way to like plug into something. Like I said, I didn't have the guts to just like blindly go to a place, and kind of figure out what to do. Like now, I kind of understand. Like, I could attend some shows. I could actually approach some people, talk to them, and then start, slowly try to go that route. But I was, super. I mean, I'm still kind of shy, but it was like crazy back then. Like I just didn't have any confidence. So it was like school seemed like a place where I could kind of like at least
meet people,
and get plugged in. And it was exactly that. And it was perfect for me.
That's cool.
At that moment, it could not have been a better thing.
Who was there with you at Mills when you went?
Jason Hoops was the first guy I met. He came in at this exact same time. This Indian percussionist, Anantha Krishnan, he and I were super close friends. Let's see.
Michael Coleman, was he there at that time?
No, actually, Michael did not go to Mills, but I met him maybe a year or two after. He and a bunch of kind of Oberlin people came to Oakland maybe a year or so before I did. And so I kind of...
Park, Kansas?
No, Oberlin,
Oberlin
College, is whatever it's called.
Sorry, I misheard you.
No, where is it?
What did you even pull this then, man? What was that?
Well, you said,
Oberlin
I thought he
Park.
said Overland, and I...
Oh, Overland. No, with a B.
Yeah, gotcha. Sorry to derail.
I met Corey Wright.
Oh, yeah.
Through Noah Phillips, the guitarist. Noah was in his second year at Mills when I was starting my first. And he is super old friends with Corey Wright and put together a trio that was the three of us.
Oh, wow.
And I met Corey in that trio, and Corey was playing Barry.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, this Barry player's pretty cool. And then, and Aram Shelton.
Yeah.
He was starting his second year when I started my first year at Mills. And so, we got hooked up through that. Andy Strain, the trombone player, was there at the same time as me. Carl Evangelista started my second year. He started his first. Oh man, I don't know. There's
what is your, and you're getting a master's degree now in at Mills?
Yeah. And, not currently, but like then, yeah.
Yes, then.
No, I know. Sorry.
And it's in performance?
Yeah, it's in performance with a specialization in improvisation.
Okay.
And who are you studying with there?
Mainly Fred Frith, Willie Wynett, but more in a just kind of, not so much improvisation, but just kind of, contemporary classical music,
like playing in his ensemble and
and taking lessons and stuff. I mean, when I auditioned, you know, and they were like, well, you know, because I said, yeah, I'm here to do this and that, and I kind of also want to study with Willie.
Yeah,
and they were like, well, you know, he's not a drum set player, and I was like, yeah, no, I know. At that point, I kind of had let like maybe my mallet playing and some general, you know, reading maybe slightly lapse, and so I just wanted to kind of get, you know, bone up on that, which was actually really helpful and really cool.
Yeah.
So is there, I don't know, is there a drum set teacher at Mills?
There is not.
So
I think, well, maybe it's changed, but there was nobody that was like on staff there to do that.
Yeah.
Right. So you couldn't study drum set, the instrument specifically, but you could kind of study improvisation and ensemble playing and all this stuff.
Yeah, but even and Roscoe Mitchell and Zena Parkins, those were probably the other two that I spent the most time with.
Yeah.
Right on.
But all those, you know, when I say, aside from their classes, I did practicums with them, which were like one-on-one things. And those were always kind of, I mean, they were described as composition practicums. But like with Fred, only maybe in our first meeting did I actually like bring in some sheet music and recordings of stuff I'd written, and we listened and checked them out. And then after that, we just played together.
Well,
that was like all it was.
Okay, but this was your first, like your first what semester? Is it?
Yeah, sure.
So
first or second.
you already have recordings then of your music. What was that?
Okay, that's there. Maybe honestly, it was like maybe 2 songs or something.
Had you like recorded them at home, or was
No, they were like live recordings or
okay,
from
cool.
a
Just
concert or something.
like a Zoom documentation kind of thing.
Oh, this is probably predated Zoom. I have no idea. A friend recorded them, or you know, like the sax player in the band recorded it for his own benefit, and I got a copy of it.
Okay,
like that type of thing.
All right. And so, would you say that you were doing a lot of improvisation? When did you? Was the first project that you started writing for in the Bay Wiener Kids?
Yeah, I wrote a couple tiny things in Oregon with that friend I described earlier, who was, you know, played bass. Yeah. He, his name, by the way, is Jeremiah Harris, if anyone cares.
Shout out to Jeremiah Harris.
Hey, Jeremiah, how's it going? He played guitar, like he and I kind of were Wiener Kids, like the first iteration of Wiener Kids.
Okay.
And I played some accordion and drums, and he played guitar mainly.
Just a 2-piece.
Yeah. And then when I got to Mills, I was like, I wanted to keep that same thing. And my first initial idea was like, maybe Fred will like record some of this stuff with me. You know, like in my head, I was like, maybe I can try to get him to try some of these things I'm writing, which in hindsight, I'm like, I'm so glad I didn't kind of venture into that. I don't think he would have been into it.
Yeah.
Plus, it would have been embarrassing, you know. But there was a
I mean,
stain,
can you elaborate on that just briefly? Because I don't really know.
Well, I don't know. Gosh, I'm not even sure how to.
Fred, that's not Fred's thing, or
well,
music
I
is
think
too...
you know he's such a. It's kind of attitude, you know. Like you get the feeling, and some people would say this too, like other students. He's just kind of intimidating, you know, and he's kind of like. It's not like he's the most like, oh, of course, yeah, let's try to play your music, and I'll, you know, he'll entertain it a little bit, but then that's, you know, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe if I had actually attempted it, everything could have gone as I dreamed, but it was just kind of a feeling. You're like, well, I don't want to bother him with that.
He's doing his own thing and perhaps not open to it.
Yeah. But then later, you know, like I've seen him play some people's music. Like Jason Hoops had a final thesis piece that was really kind of ambitious. It had like 4 guitars in it and gamelan and a string quartet and like maybe 3 percussionists.
Wow.
And Fred was one of the guitarists in that thing.
I want to hear that.
Along with some other students. It's a cool piece.
Yeah.
I think it's on his MySpace, maybe, if you want. If that still is up.
Let's bring that up.
I'll see if I can find Jason.
Yeah, do it.
With any of these practicums, like, did you get anything that really deeply influenced your writing, or was it just more improvisation and those ideas coming through in your writing? Did anyone like say anything as a teacher at Mills that you're just like, boom, I'm gonna...
That influenced my writing?
Yeah, specifically your composition. I'm curious.
I'm trying to think. I mean, in the classes and stuff, you're exposed to like, they'll show you a piece by so-and-so and some recordings. And so certain methods or way people were making music.
Yeah.
Like that kind of had an impact on me. Like, I'll try this idea out or how they're doing this. And, but things anyone said or kind of like maybe commented on something I was writing, not really. I can't think of, there were certain ideas. Like I remember writing a piece that was basically just a, like say it was for the three of us, and I would just be like, Bob starts at, and then Mark enters, Jordan enters, Bob exits.
Just like a text.
Kind of Mark enters, and then Jordan drops out when Mark enters. Things like that. So just had kind of a choreography of what happens in a linear way.
Okay.
Sure.
And then I remember like Zena Parkins saying like, when we performed it, she was like, that's cool. And I think I had times to it to make it like a 5-minute piece or something like that. But she was like, yeah, cool. You should try to do that. Try to do the same piece in like 20 seconds or something like that. Wow. And so things like that, I'd kind of go like, oh, wow, okay, cool. Yeah, what would that be like if we just tried to do it like super, super dense or stretched out for 20 minutes and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
The improvisation stuff was kind of, I don't know. Did it inform my composition? I'm trying to think. It's a little bit, but not maybe subconsciously.
Yeah.
There was just exercises of like, improvise something that's 3 events in the course of 7 minutes.
Okay.
Let's go. And then, so you're sitting there and you're trying to and so it's a lot of space. And you're trying to think about what those events are and where they go and whatever and stuff like that. Or, like that's kind of what I did mainly. It was exercises about trying to push yourself a little further outside of maybe what you're comfortable doing.
Yeah. And for me personally as a listener, like I could see, and I think I've even seen some of the scores, but the music for Wiener Kids, the iteration with Corey and Aram, was a lot of that like graphic kind of event based? And I know that you notated some, there was definitely musical notation, but I'm just, because a lot of the times just listening to it, it's almost like a zip, pop, ding, like events like this kind of happening. And
that stuff, like Naked City, John Zorn's group, or that kind of music, the cartoony type of stuff.
Yeah.
I think I saw also some scores to that music through Fred, who played bass in Naked City. He had like a folder of Naked City music.
Oh, cool.
And I remember thumbing through that and kind of like getting to, and recognizing tunes, like the titles and stuff, and remembering kind of what those recordings and going, oh, cool, that's this one. And just looking at it and seeing how he wrote out stuff, and also some Eugene Chadbourne scores. I remember finding, I don't even know where I got this.
Who is Eugene Chadbourne?
Eugene Chadbourne's a guitarist who's kind of a contemporary of Zorn and the Rova saxophone quartet guys. But I saw some scores he wrote for the Rova sax quartet that are have this kind of notation of just like sound events that are kind of ordered, and so that kind of thing, like it was like, oh, here's a way to kind of just get these sound, like play with these sounds and try to put them together.
Yeah.
So some of the Wiener Kids stuff is that. Some of it's straight up just melodies and lines, and then now we go into a solo or whatever, or you solo over this vamp or these types of things. And then there's some more abstract stuff I wrote for Wiener Kids that I don't think really got a lot of stage time. Definitely weren't documented on recordings.
Yeah.
They were just kind of like experiments that we did them a few times, but they were more like, okay, put this in to break things up. So, but
and I
they
think
just didn't ring the same way that
But you also had, like, didn't you originally write my bike for that group?
You know what? My bike was something I wrote back in Eugene. That's one of the first things I wrote and brought to Fred. And actually, Fred, his comment was really profound to me at the time, because originally it was like, it's like the whole melody is just half notes and whole notes, and it's just this very simple thing, and it's just two voices.
Yeah.
Written at the piano with like, my right hand and left hand just playing like one finger. And when I played in Eugene with a group that was just bass and saxophone and drums, it's just like jazz. I have no other, I don't know anything else. It was like we played the melody, which was just that thing, and then then the saxophone player started improvising, and we're like backing him up. And he just stopped the recording and was like, you don't need the improvisation sometimes. Like that was just you could just have that, that could stand alone and I was like, what? Like, what are you talking about? Like I would write something and then we just play what I wrote and that's it. Like I just was like, what? That never even occurred to me.
Oh, interesting.
And so sometimes I was like, oh yeah, I can write something that has no improvising in it.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Wow.
So like these degrees of things, or you can have one person improvising throughout something while everyone else plays a written thing, and then it ends. Yeah. Like that's, you know what I mean? So you start to go, duh, oh, you can do all these combinations of stuff. It just doesn't occur. It didn't occur to me, right? Until people say these things or I'm told. No, it's such a weird thing.
It's important, for sure,
So when did Wiener Kids actually start? Was it in school or later?
Yeah, that was probably 2009, maybe. Like my second year at Mills. Okay. I kind of put it together. It was my first year not 2009, 2007. Sorry, for those keeping track. My first year at Mills, I was trying to recreate the group I had in Eugene, which was like guitar and drums. And there was a Mills student at the time named Steini Gunnarsson, this Icelandic guitarist and composer, amazing composer. I highly suggest checking his music out. He's doing some amazing things that are just a continuation of what he was working on at Mills. Like in terms of a through thread, this guy is like not skipped a beat in his like progress of his vision of what music is. It's really profound and dope.
What's his name?
Steini Gunnarsson. Well,
how do you?
Gudmundur Steini Gunnarsson. I'm probably butchering it. I don't know how. Good luck. I can't give you any more guidance than that.
Is it Gunnarsson or Gunderson?
The first one, I think. He had his whole music thing that was like, the scores were on computer and they were like I guess the analogy you could use is like, what's that, Pong? With the two paddles.
Yeah.
And the ball that goes back and forth. He'd have these like scores that kind of looked like that. And so you would have maybe a sound you'd play that would be kind of correspond to the right side and a sound you'd play that corresponded to the left side. And there'd be a ball bouncing back and forth.
So they were animated.
And they were animated. And everyone had these different things. So, that's a super basic version. He had like way more complex versions of this. But the ensembles then would have these kind of like, very pointillistic kind of things, and sometimes there'd be sustain and then. But aside from that kind of whole vibe of that, what that might sound like, his choice of instruments and sounds were always so cool. He'd have like real instruments, but then he would also build these super crude instruments that involved like kazoos or bottles you'd blow onto or tin cans you would pull a skewer through and go make these crazy sounds. And so he was just kind of like mixing those with like guitar harmonics and pizzicato strings and stuff. And so I just like the whole energy, or recorders or toy instruments mixed in with this stuff. And I just like really dug it. And he was so nice and a great guitar player too. Like he knew just like a lot of rock and roll and stuff. He just loved to play this stuff on guitar. And so I was writing stuff and he was just like eating it up and never really, some like if maybe, especially if they're inexperienced with improvisation or kind of asking you all these questions about what to do with what's in front of them. And he just kind of would like, that was never the case. You just put the sheet music in front of him and you maybe go like, okay, here's what I'm thinking. And then you start to play and he would fill in, he would just fill in a lot of the stuff. And I was almost, I can't think of a moment where I was ever like, oh no, could it go this direction, or could you not, do this instead of that? I was always like surprised. I'm like, wow, look what he's doing with this.
Yeah, so like intuitive, natural.
Yeah. Well, and so his voice or what he does, it was like became like what I was really into. And then players like that, where you don't have to tell them much, they fill it in.
Mm-hmm.
They make it better.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So like I don't have to write so much. You just kind of steer them in a certain direction, or you kind of put them in the right context, and then it's like, okay, they're making the music.
Yeah.
And it's cool. And I get to say, I did it, or I get to put my signature on the big picture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm kidding, of course. But,
well.
But yeah, that,
so
he did that. And then I started with Aram and Corey with the 2 saxophone version when Staney graduated and moved back to Iceland.
And that's where he is now?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I started with them kind of based on the Joey Barron trio, or what's that called? Barron Down.
Mm-hmm.
Joey Barron had a trio that was tenor saxophone and trombone and drums. And that was also kind of influential because his writing's really pretty simple in general.
Yeah.
You're talking about just Joey Barron stuff?
Yeah. I don't know. It just gave me some confidence in writing something, and it didn't have to be like, super heavy and involved.
Like overly complex.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so it just, I don't know, it gave me the confidence to go, let me just try things and put it out there, and it'll...
Well, I mean, one thing that I've noticed, and I did want to bring this up when we come around to the Beak stuff, is even if you think you're using simple elements in the writing, like the Wiener Kids does not sound like a simple music band to me at all. Like that music sounds complex and a lot of energy, a lot of things moving around quickly. You know, a lot of like, you stop on a dime, turn around, go the other direction. You
right.
know?
Your sonic material on the drum set in Wiener Kids is so complex. I would almost dare people to transcribe it, because it's like
on the drum set.
Yeah, because some of the stuff you're doing is like you make these like little quick sounds that are like they're normal. It's like so natural to you, obviously, but it's like I think like a normal drum set player or a person that doesn't play drum set is fascinated by it. Oh
wow.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, okay, yeah. That's I don't know what to say about that. I mean, like, I don't feel like I'm doing anything new, or if that makes sense. Like, again, like there's so many drummers that I've like, you pick up what they're doing or kind of copy what they're doing or see something, and you just are trying to like do your version of these things.
Yeah, but
you practice them, and
you are definitely the filter,
Right. No, of course. Sure. Well,
yep.
Yeah. Thanks. That's nice.
Sarah always described it, and I think it's actually, this is actually the same with your conducting in Beak. Like it's great. Like Corey and Aram are great, but you're the show on Wiener Kids, because like Sarah always described your drum set playing as like dancing because of how like kind of emotive you are with your body, and also how fluid everything is with your playing.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, yeah, cool. I mean, my aunt is a dance teacher, and I took dance lessons when I was before drumming.
Oh, interesting.
Ballet and tap
that's
dance.
Right. I forgot about this little.
Not that you said dancer, so that's what I thought of. But
yeah,
I do think that probably helped, at least with the rhythmic aspect of things, tap dancing.
You did tap dancing? Nice.
Oh yeah.
So I'm probably going to ask this for a few different of the projects, but for Wiener Kids, does the music come out of improvisations, or are you sketching it out? Do you have like...
I think most of that is probably sketched out, or like singing voice memos to myself of certain things I'm hearing. I don't think a lot. I'm trying to think. Some parts may have come out of improvisations, but not much. Most of that is me sitting at a keyboard or kind of imagining music and writing it down.
Did those guys ever write anything, or is it all your stuff?
It's all my stuff. the thought of opening it up to them was kind of on the table right towards the end. I can't remember. It just kind of like that didn't ever. I don't think anyone even did like start to. Yeah, no, it was all mine, and there was that stuff is like pretty potent in terms of like it's the vibe of it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then when I would think about it, I'd kind of go, well, Aaron's writing is very different.
So is Corey's, yeah.
Yeah, and so like maybe something would come of them trying to write in the style of what it is we're doing. But I also was just like they have very distinct compositional kind of voices.
Yes.
And realizing mine is too. Like in this context, it's like, oh, it's very specific. So maybe it should just be that. And but I do miss that group because I was turning over not a ton of music, but I felt like I was kind of really on a productive train there for a minute.
Yeah, I mean, how many years were you guys working together?
Maybe 11 or 10 or 11 years.
Yeah, and that's a long time to get used to composing in a certain way, and because when you have to take on new composing projects, it can be hard to feel like you're being productive or like you. For me anyway, sometimes I just feel completely like a fraud for a little while.
Well, sure, yeah, that's definitely.
So, back at Mills, did Dominique Leon go to Mills?
No, but I met him kind of through somebody at Mills. Yeah,
Curtis, was it Curtis?
No, it was.
Did Curtis go to Mills? Curtis went to Mills. Right?
He did. Yeah. But
Curtis McKinney. Space.
Oh my gosh, why am I blanking on names all of a sudden? There was a couple students he seemed to be close with that he was like, I know he was roommates with like Shayna Dunkelman for a minute, who was a percussionist and at Mills when I was there.
Yeah.
Right.
And we just kind of ran in the same circles a little bit.
So
yeah.
Like you did 2 years at Mills, or was it 3?
2.
So, and are you by the end of that playing in as many bands as you typically do in the Bay Area, or are you just starting to get into that, or?
By that point, I was playing a lot. Yeah.
And
it dovetailed into the real world pretty organically.
Yeah. Like, and are you starting to teach, or is that late? Does that come later?
I started teaching kind of right after Mills.
Right.
Yeah. Andrew Conklin, the guitarist, helped me get a job at a, crappy place in Pleasant Hill. Yeah. So I started there and I did that for a while, and then I moved to this rock school in San Francisco. That's great.
Yeah. It's a good gig.
SF Rock Project, shout out.
So when do you think that you started coming up with the idea for Beak? I kind of want to start discussing that band a little bit because
Can we just pause and I'm just curious how if there was something, if you knew that you wanted to stay in the Bay Area, if you knew that you wanted to stay in the Bay Area at that time, or if you wanted to still try, or if you were trying to do something else or thinking about other things,
right?
Or what, like,
yeah, I definitely was thinking about other things, but again, it's like, I don't know, like change is hard for me and stuff, right? So like moving from Eugene to here was kind of a big event.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then the idea of leaving here and going somewhere else, also pretty like daunting and massive event, And the number of people that ask me around here, oh, so you moving to New York now? Or like, when are you moving to New York? And that question was coming up forever.
Yeah.
Forever. For like, let me see, I graduated in 2008.
I don't understand the desire to move to New York, but we can table.
Oh, sure. I mean, I totally understand the desire, and I had it, and I thought about it. But again, it was just one of these things where it was like, I don't know, just being scared. But like, I want to say maybe 2012, 2014,
Yeah.
15. In that kind of window, it was like I was being asked that all the time. I think there was like this crest of like, this is when you would do it. And I didn't. And then now it's 2021 and I'm here. And I start like, I playing with Fred Frith and getting to tour and stuff.
Yeah.
Like that. I was like, man, this is it. I'm doing what I want to be doing.
When did you tour with Fred first?
First, I don't even know.
Or when did you start really playing with Fred in his band?
That's, maybe 2011 or 12.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
And, that's like, so like Jason and Fred and I as a trio played together maybe half a dozen times over the course of like 2 or 3 years. Like perform, never rehearsed, just shows. Yeah. And it would be, at the Berkeley Arts Center or maybe at, what's another place? I don't even know. Like, just tiny little things here and there.
That place.
What?
I was just saying, RIP Berkeley Arts Center.
Yeah.
Studio Grand, things like that. Just kind of like one-off shows here and there.
Like Mama Buzz or whatever that place was called?
Oh, sure. But I don't know if Fred ever walked into there.
Oh, okay.
But things like that. And then Fred might have like a residency at the Stone and invited us to play one of those. And we did. And then I think he did one where we got to play kind of exclusively for a few of the nights in a row.
Oh, wow.
And then we did a European tour. And then a year later, or maybe a year and a half later, 2 years later, we'd do another one. So off and on, we've been doing some like, where we recorded a couple records. And
you still play with him, yeah?
Yeah, we're planning to go on the road next year in March, but we'll see.
Awesome.
Yeah.
We're working on a live record right now combing through a bunch of live recordings from all those past tours and putting together a record. But, bringing him up and the Beak stuff, there's a big connection between all that.
Like with what you did with Gravity or just his ethos in general?
His ethos in general.
Okay.
The Gravity stuff was like, that was a whole weird experience that, do you guys know that record at all? Because I didn't.
Not super well, no.
I don't know.
Yeah, see, I didn't, I know some people, it's like, certain prog people, it's like, oh man, this record is, and for Dominique that you mentioned earlier, it was a big deal, and Aaron Novick, those two guys loved that record, and I was kind of playing them in both their bands, and they posed this idea to Fred, hey, what if we recreate your record live? Because apparently that record's kind of like 2 parts. It's like kind of a mixed ensemble, and then like kind of this band from someone's gonna get me on this. They're a band from somewhere on the East Coast, maybe Maryland.
We'll be receiving emails about this.
The Muffins. That's what's coming to mind. Maybe I'm wrong. Anywho, he worked with that band and then like another ensemble, and the record's kind of a mix of these 2 groups, like on certain tracks. And so they were like, hey, we'll use Aaron's group to kind of be this part of it and Dominique's group to be this part of it. Oh. And we'll play your record. And Fred was into the idea, and it ended up being more like both bands were just kind of on stage and played as everything. But Aaron and Dominique kind of divvied up the transcribing part, and I think Fred may have provided some sheet music, but very little. And then we just kind of started to flush it out.
Yeah.
And
that's really interesting.
Yeah, it was really weird because I was listening to the recordings and trying to do that, but then the scores were kind of jacked up and not quite what the music was on the recording.
Oh man.
But then you work it out in rehearsals, like how it'll actually go. I don't know. And that was really a great experience, and that was super cool to learn that music that way. But
yeah, what were you saying about Beak and Fred? This is interesting because I would have not placed those things together in my head.
Oh, well, okay. Let me say this. Okay, playing with Fred is one thing, like performing. You're just improvising. That's all we've ever done. Mm-hmm. With very little direction. Though sometimes maybe he'd be unhappy and say, like, I feel like I'm soloing guitarist over, a bass and drum. And it's like not what he wants. Like it sounds just too like guitar solo and bass and drums are sitting there, grooving. And so he was just trying to figure out ways of breaking it up so it was all different,
Yeah.
We had different roles. He'd play drums on the guitar and play bass on the guitar. His palette and ability to kind of morph is crazy. I mean, he's a one-man band, really.
Yeah.
Anyway, but in the studio is where like that shit got real. Like when we first went in, he had this idea of or he wanted to have kind of an idea or way that we can maybe do some stuff. And he just didn't get anything together. And then the date came and he showed up and he was just like, oh man, we were just loading in and we had no idea what we were going to do. And we just started improvising and we recorded and we improvised. We listened to some of it. We came back, we improvised. We just do big blocks of like maybe 40, 50 minutes of just improvising.
Wow.
And then sit there and listen to all of it. And then watching him listen to it and pull out chunks and start to and resequence them and then do all these interesting things where it's like, okay, mute me and just have the bass and drums. And then he'd put the guitar from some other track on top of it, or he'd re-record something, or he'd ask you to go in and re-record your part starting at this, or just add a cymbal roll during this part and then have it kind of release when I cue you to release.
Interesting.
Or let's Jason just bring out the acoustic and just play this B flat kind of right here and like start and just improvise a part to that. And or all these experiments and he's like shaping it and then all of a sudden you're like he's starting to see and hear a thread through all of it. And then he makes this record that's like improvised but been like edited together to like sound more cohesive and bring out the things that click, and you're just shaving off the fat. So you're just like, okay, here we are developing this or searching. Oh, now it's hitting. So like we'll start here.
Yeah.
So the stuff just sounds like you're diving in and you're right in the middle of like the best part.
Yeah.
Wow.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so hearing that and seeing that and watching him work that way, and also him being open to like an idea you might have where you're like, oh, what if we did this? And you come in and sometimes it'd work and sometimes it wouldn't.
Yeah.
And then for the second record we did stuff where it was like somebody would play a solo while the other two were out of the room and not listening to it, and then they'd have to come in and play to your recording. Or just all sorts of stuff, but no actual writing.
So that would be more to affect the way that the soloist is playing as opposed to the other because I feel like you're going to play differently if you're unaccompanied and that people aren't listening to you. Maybe I'm just because part of me is like, why why wouldn't you just have everyone play together if that
Or sometimes you'd have maybe all of us play solos, but that were 2 minutes, and then you'd just put them on top of each other and see what they sounded like.
Interesting. Okay.
Or there was one where he was like, and this was after hours of playing, and I personally was just like, I'm out of it. Like I don't even know. I don't have anything else to do. Like right. Like I'm just. And he was listening to it, and he's like, I don't know what you guys are doing. I'm here. I'm present. I'm doing this stuff. You guys go back in and re-record like what you're doing. So we kept his guitar track for like this big piece. And then Jason and I went back in and he said, just do a totally different approach. Like whatever, you heard what you were doing. Let's go a totally different direction. And then it was like kind of liberating. I was like, oh, okay, I will take all the shit off my drums. I'll just play normal drums with sticks. And I just played like I was, Paul Motion on an ECM record.
Yeah.
And that's what ended up being that track. And it's like, oh yeah, this sounds cool. But I don't know if I kind of would have went to this place necessarily. He was like, okay, we're too far now over here. Do something different. So I was like, oh, okay, I forgot. There's all this.
Yeah.
So it seems like multiple times you've mentioned Fred Frith kind of like breaking the ice for you on like an idea.
Yeah, totally.
Like a fresh idea.
And so then circling back to the Beak stuff, it's like I'm into conducting, like a really big fan of Butch Morris and all that stuff, and was wanting to kind of do that, but then also maybe integrate some like written material so that it's not all improvised.
Yeah.
And and trying to figure out how that, I don't know. It's all an experiment. And I'm not writing anything specific for Beak. I'm using all old past, like a lot of that's Wiener Kids music or parts of Wiener Kids music or things I wrote for another piece.
About that. There's never been a Beak song that you've written.
Maybe Jive Stick. Well, no, there's been a couple. I mean, but some of the stuff that's been in the repertoire, like the longest, is all old, like all the Bus 2, whatever the Cock-a-doodle thing.
Yeah.
So what am I missing? But that stuff's all from other things.
Before Beak, wasn't there the Family Band or whatever it was called?
Oh yeah, the Wiener Kids Family Band,
which is like, in my opinion, it's like the gradient between Wiener Kids and Beak.
Yeah, no, that's accurate for sure. Yeah, that was Wiener Kids stuff that I then wanted to write out for a large group.
And you were conducting it.
Yeah, because I think some of that needed conduction or conducting to kind of glue it together.
Did you ever play drums with that type of ensemble? I know there was like a couple different like names for things you were doing from time to time.
No, I don't think I ever played drums. Not in the family band.
Okay.
Beak, I've kind of thought about. I've been interested in having a form of Beak where I played drums, and it was maybe like a almost slightly smaller group. But there's some. I don't know. I think I almost should go bigger than smaller because there's something about that band. The more people you get in it, the kind of the potential for like some really high energy is.
Oh yeah,
just increased.
The moments in that band are so incredible.
But that so then writing like snippets of material, having you guys try to play it while I'm shaping it, realizing then connecting that to like Fred's method in the studio, it was like, it became like this, like, oh, okay, I can compose like this way. Like you guys have been in Beak, right? So you know how like, I'm going to use Bus 2
Full disclosure, we both played extensively in this band.
Right. For not to get too inside here, like Bus 2, that piece, we have a way we play it.
That's like the hit single.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It's we know how it starts and it ends a certain way.
Yeah.
And you hit these marks in the middle. And they pretty consistently, it's that, right?
Yes.
But if you think about like the very first times we kind of played it, it didn't have some of those aspects to it, right? It was more experimental where I was like, what if we started with the end part and then maybe put that on top? Even though I had compositionally, I knew like it goes to here, and then it goes to this part. But like the idea with Beak was like, well, what if now that they're just loose pieces on the table, we just rearrange them like crazy? But then you realize sometimes you're like, okay, that doesn't work at all. Right? And so then in performance, I'd go, okay, like now we have a new arrangement that works like this. And to me, almost, it's like, okay, now that's done. That's that piece like that. And so I'm realizing like, oh, I can compose over months with this ensemble and like it can find itself. And then so I'm starting to realize like I write better if I'm improvising. So I would start to do that. I'd start to write things from the drum set, just improvising.
Yeah.
And then like try to hear what's in that and write to that rather than like sitting with a piece of paper at the keyboard and just trying to, because I get lost in the details. But if you're zoomed out and you're just like, here's a piece of music already there.
Would you voice note it or?
Oh, maybe. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You mean on like your phone?
Yeah, just to document it so if you're improvising, you
can
can
that's exactly right.
it.
Sorry, yes. I'm recording some, like, I'm recording improvisation. Like some of the dance music I've done is that. Like I'd improvise, I'd record it, I would fish out the kind of things I like, and then I would try to write those down, and then I would re-record myself kind of distilling those things and like trying to just kind of hold that together. And I'm realizing like that method works better because when it's organic and it's loose, like I feel like it sounds better than when I'm trying to like, use my thoughts of like tone rows and rhythmic complexity and certain mathematical things. It just, sometimes that just doesn't, I can do things, but it doesn't sound, to me, it just doesn't sound as good as like that kind of organic flow type stuff.
Right. So
you're
talking about like formal compositional techniques versus just letting the music be created and documenting that and then distilling that.
Yeah. But I think you can use improvisation as a way to the thing where it's like, say I'm writing for a string quartet and it's all notated. I think to get to that point, I can use improvisation methods to kind of hone in on that thing. Rather than kind of coming at it from like, here's the score paper and my pencil, and I'm now trying to write their notes down and stuff. It's like, for me, it doesn't work as well. Or that's what I'm interested in is.
I have one question about that in general.
Just one?
Well, this is a big question that I had, and just in general, because all the music that you and I have played together, there's been a lot of improvisation, and I know that you value that like immensely in your own writing as well, giving space for people, but also having your own voice as a composer. How do you feel about these projects where it's been like through composed music and you're, like the what is slowly close the door? Is it? Am I getting that order? Oops, sorry.
Oh yeah,
getting the order of that right? Like, because that to me is extremely beautiful music, and I really like it a lot.
That stuff's an anomaly though. Like that's a totally different. I mean, yeah, that's
anomaly.
Well, no, I mean, like it's not. That's not an example of like, Jordan, do what you do whatever you want, go. Like it has certain needs and requirements. As you're going down that road, it's like you're realizing, okay, they want this, and often you're hearing examples of like, okay, this is our placeholder music, or this is what this kind of thing is what we're after.
But
so it's more like you have a job to do as a composer.
A little bit, yeah.
Just to clarify,
yeah, sure.
That is music for a dance piece.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
they gave you direction perhaps and some texts or something to work with and so, but wouldn't
wait, sorry, which one is that?
That's the Liss
the
Fain,
doors.
That's one of the Liss Fain pieces.
No, right, but is that the all percussion one or is that the other one that had the strings in it?
Close
and
the Door
too?
Slowly.
I can't remember which one that was.
Gabby and
Miles.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah. That's. See, when the first score I did for Liss Fain was all percussion, and that was one of the main reasons I did that, because she when she was like, I'm hearing all percussion, and I was like, great, because I was like, that we can do this, and this will be cool. And that was really awesome, and that was largely improvised stuff that I kind of then choreographed, like I blocked out. I took improvisations.
Never Will, the piece.
Yeah. And Jacob, one of the percussionists, and Nava, we improvised a lot, and they're improvisers. Yeah, especially Jacob. And so it was like, I was trying to like hear what I videotaped us too, so I could see them doing things, and then I could specifically ask for some of the stuff that they do. That's like not normal stuff.
Yeah, big time.
Like Jacob has all these techniques that, like, when you watch him do it, and I was like, okay, and you'd see,
it's like the cymbal on the bass drum and all that.
Yeah, you could see how you kind of could manipulate it, and you were like, okay, well, he could play rhythms if I wrote out the rhythms in that way, or he can just make that texture if we need. All right, okay, cool. And so you'd start to use that stuff as what you're composing with. Yeah, and then I'd actually just and some of that is like I was saying before in those pieces where it's like text, where it's just like Nava starts, it's bells, it's tinkly stuff. Or, you're just giving them a general drums. You're like, you say, play on the toms, and then after time, again, we all hone it and we go, okay, this is what it is. They're not like exploring that much in the live performances, even though the score is vague. Yeah. Together, we've found kind of what it is.
You found the piece.
Yeah. And so they just do that.
Some of your first time working with dancers, or have you done stuff before Liss, working with Liss?
The first thing before Liss was the Sharp and Fine one.
Wait, which Sharp and Fine one?
I think, the Lion one.
I didn't. There's so many.
I think that's
Sharp
the
and
first
Fine
one.
pieces.
That's the first one.
So you did that.
Yeah.
And so that had Mark. Did you play in that or?
No, that was Crystal played in that.
Yeah, I saw that.
And who else? You played vibraphone though, right?
Maybe. I mean, I played all the drums and percussion. I can't remember if there was vibes. Corey was in that.
Yeah.
Arjun played violin.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And then Ina. Am I saying that right?
Ina,
sorry.
Yeah.
Sarah's sister sang.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that one. That's more of an example of like the second Liss Fain thing I did that had very specific kind of vibe and, a direction. Like it couldn't be glink glonk crazy abstract music.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It was like we're going for a very specific mood and kind of energy and like flavor here, those two scores were very challenging.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, do you enjoy making music like that?
I mean, oh man, yes, there's something satisfying at the end of it.
Yeah,
but there's parts of it I really like listening back and going, oh, I'm really proud of this. But then there's also parts of it that I'm like, oh, I don't like what I wrote here. Someone could do this way better than me. This is not my thing. I feel like I'm trying to do something that's not really my strong suit.
Yeah.
But out of that, I feel like there's some growth.
You do it very well.
Oh, you're very kind, Bob. But I like there's stuff I was like, okay, Bob could do this or Mark could do this a lot better.
No, but you have a particular control of timbre over all instruments that I think is like very special for you. Like your tastes in texture are brilliant in a lot of.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and I will say, like listening to "Close the Door Slowly," it's beautiful music. Like
thanks.
I hadn't listened to that one until more recently, and it's like I'm way into it, and
cool.
and it is a departure from what I have come to typify as your style, but I love it. So even if the compositional process is hard and you're all in your head, and because I can relate to that, the end product, I think I'm glad you're doing it. But I'm just curious, like.
Well, some of that, I think that what makes that some of that work or the stuff I really like the best is when you're allowing like Gabby's an improviser, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And so letting them do their thing over some written stuff. Like when I hear like what's going on with that interaction there, like to me, I'm like, that's where it's at.
Yeah.
And I hired. Yeah, listen to me. I asked them to play in that because I thought it was going to be a lot looser, and then it slowly became like, okay, there's got to be a lot of like legitimate. There's got to be like just more straight up writing, like you know what I mean, real straightforward traditional writing. And I was like, oh boy, this is such a different thing. So then it's kind of that's the main challenge of that one.
Yeah.
But mixing, letting people, especially when you talk about like timbre and stuff like that, some of it's knowing what people can do, like knowing them personally and saying, oh, I've seen them do these things.
Yeah.
And just then giving them the space to do those things. Like that's all it is. I'm not, as much as I wish I knew all the techniques the cello could do, like, and know how to notate them. It's way easier to just to say to someone, hey, remember that thing you did? Like, can you do that here?
Yeah.
Like this?
Yeah.
And they go, okay. And they just pencil that in onto the, the long note you wrote. It's like, that's where I'm at.
Yeah. Well, the results though, man, they're.
Yeah. I mean, that's almost better though, because like you could like spend a week trying to figure out a notation for a special technique to perfectly capture exactly this like one thing that they could do, or like, like if you just hand it to the performer, they let them modulate it as they see fit. It's almost, it's like 1,000 times easier, and like the result you get might be better. Like,
yeah.
So it's like,
and in my experience, most of the time it is better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because people navigating the paper sometimes, like when you and you've all experienced this, where you're like listening to someone try to play the stuff on the page, and in your mind you're like, no, it's a lot easier than it looks on the paper. It's just this.
Yes.
And when they realize that, and you've done that too as a performer, you sometimes you're like, oh, this is really hard. And then when you realize kind of what it is, you can like then do it and make it sound like it's natural and organic.
Yeah.
And so like trying to just get to that rather than like go, hey, try to decipher this code. And it's like, oh man. Just trying to quickly get to the music. That's, man.
Yeah.
That's what's
so
hard.
Can I ask, as we're like heading towards the end of this, what do you think what have you been working on lately, and like what's kind of coming up for you?
Oh, I was hoping you wouldn't ask this.
Or like what are you thinking about? What do you think you might want to be? I mean, obviously we've all been in quarantine for a year or whatever, like kind of twiddling our thumbs a little bit.
Well, I'm slowly getting back to stuff. You know, I was writing for a second early in the quarantine for the Sifter quartet that I'm in with Lisa Mezzacappa and Beth Shank and Rob Ewing, the saxophone, trombone, bass, and drums group.
Yeah.
I was trying to, I was like, oh, I'm going to write all these things for them now. And I started some stuff and I fell off the wagon there. And I'm planning to kind of go back to that. I'm also trying. There's a Beak record that's like constructed in my head, and I know which tunes and how they're going to unfold, and I want to flush that out. You know, like as soon as we can. That would have been done sooner, but financially, that's a whole other thing. What am I working? Well, at the end of this month, I'm recording a solo drum set thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I booked some studio time with Zach Watkins to do this record, which it was more just kind of like, it's something I've been meaning to do.
Yeah.
And I just had to kind of put a date down and like go for it rather than like...
Just drum set solo?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Drum set and, basically me live with a bunch of shit and just playing.
I saw you do a drum set solo once at the near the final days of the Mind Gaze Hut. That was like I was playing there with some group, and you were doing just a drum set solo that was like, it had to have been like 30 minutes long, and it was like,
oh wow,
it was one of the best things I've ever seen you do, honestly.
Wow,
because it was just,
oh man.
Just you.
Wish I'd known that at the time. I probably would have recorded this earlier.
I mean, that was like one of the things that I was like,
yeah, definitely.
I was thinking is like, man, should have been recording this, but yeah. Well,
I don't know. It's more, I don't know. I'm trying to keep an open mind, and there's just certain things I've developed that I kind of want to document in a certain way, but I'm trying not to get too ambitious, or I'm keeping my expectations low in terms of what I accomplish, but it's not going to be something I'm going to record and sit on.
Yeah.
Because that was also the idea was like, oh, hey, Zach, I want to record this and mix it all in that day, and then
release it.
We move on.
Yeah.
Because I had some other ideas where I was like, oh, I'll layer myself, I'll write these things, I'll do all this stuff, and I was like, no, maybe we can actually get this done and like check it off, and there it is. And if I want to do another one, cool. That's
a good approach sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's a Wiener Kids record I'm sitting on that finally
really
is like kind of done. I'll send it to you guys. I'm pretty proud of it. Michael Coleman did some kind of reimagining with the mix. That makes it sound pretty far out. That was the key to me, like wanting to follow through with this.
Yeah.
Right
on. Yeah. But anyways, I hope to get in a studio with you too soon.
Yeah.
Well, or, in the next year. We'll see.
I'd be happy to.
Yeah.
It's obviously a little more difficult for me, but...
Oh, no, of course.
I would love to.
Obviously. Well, yeah, man.
It'll happen at some point.
We'll figure that out. I'm excited that I'm getting, like, rehearsal emails again. It's insane. But I'm like, oh, man. Am I ready to go back? Am I ready for this?
Yeah.
But, yeah, man. Well, yeah. Send us that record.
I will.
And
what's the plan with this podcast? Or I mean, in general, not this episode. I don't care about this episode.
We have like a list of folks that we'd like to do a similar thing with, where we talk about their background and compositional.
It's funny.
Adventures.
I feel like we have notes on this, and I've been kind of keeping us on track a little bit as we've been going. But I feel like in each case, like in every stop along the way here, I could talk to you about Beak for literally hours, probably.
Yeah.
No, sure. And I could talk about it too for hours. Or listen to you guys talk about it for hours.
I do have one question, though.
Please.
I've always wondered if bus 2 is in reference to a transportation bus or a mixing bus.
Oh, it's a transportation bus.
Oh.
All right.
And the 2 part is only because I wrote a part 1 that has like, the end bass line of that.
Yeah.
That's like embedded in I just wrote a longer version of it and then wrote more stuff, and that's bus 1. And bus 2, I was like, oh man, the line, just that part of it sounds pretty cool just by itself. So I wrote bus 2. And bus 2 by far is like the
hit.
The hit. Bus 1 is like unlistenable.
Now Bob can sleep well knowing this. You finally got it.
Yeah. I think I'm going to record, like, I've been doing, just to keep my practice up, like videos, like multi-tracking myself.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll do a cover of Bus 2.
Oh, please. Man, I'd love to hear that.
Can I get in on that?
Yeah. If you want.
Yeah,
record myself, and
we'll throw in some Will Redmond voice memos on top.
You know that's in my record, right?
Really? No, I didn't.
The Next Dirty Snacks record has a Will Redmond voice memo in it.
Oh, can't wait.
It's hilarious, dude.
I was going to play an excerpt. Maybe I'll just play a bit of it. We were planning on playing some excerpts, but obviously we don't have time anymore. But I prepared...
We can edit them in, but
I
anyway.
prepared a 6-minute... I was like, I'm going to trim down this thing. And it's like a 20-minute thing of it. It goes from This Is Why We Can't Have Nice Things to like a kalimba jam to Cock-a-Doodle to For Good Measure, I think. Wait, which one is For Good Measure? Is
that one's Cock-a-Doodle, the Cock-a-Doodle coda, whatever, coda something.
Oh, okay.
That's Cock-a-Doodle.
By the way, Shell's student
I'm
canceled,
sorry. No, you're right.
So we're all good.
Okay.
Oh
no, you're right. That's This Is Why We Can't Have Nice Things. Sorry.
Right.
So
anyway, a really great recording. Maybe I'll just play this like little bit of it, just because I just think that this is. I was listening to all my Beak recordings, which I have many of, and it's just like some of my favorite things are when, like, we're going in the live performance and there's like, you get something going. I love because it's like, and then you either like, maybe it's so good, like you were gonna like go back, but then you're like, no, or like maybe you're like doing the insert cue and you're like, oh, it's so good. It has to stay here. We have to keep going with this.
Yeah.
Or like,
yeah.
Oh no, totally. I mean, that's what I loved about Beak and conducting so much is like, especially like someone like Will, since we were talking about him, he was somebody that would just insert things that were like not asked for. You know what I mean? Like I didn't like motion, do something, which is like the most basic one, like play something.
Yeah.
It was more like, you're just out. Okay. Right. I'll get to you in a second. We're doing stuff. And he just throw something in.
I know, man.
And you go, and all of a sudden it's like, that's okay. You're like, that's it. That's the thread right there. We're following it. Do you know what I mean? So like, some people approach that stuff with like, okay, well, Jordan's in charge. He says what to do and when to do it and how to do it. And I'll just stand by. And that's not necessarily what it's about. It's kind of like, there needs to be some input from the players. And Will's just like perfect like that. It's almost like he can't stop playing sometimes. So he just puts things in and you're like, okay, great. Yeah. Because I'm out of ideas or I don't have I don't know where this is going. And then somebody does something and you go, yes, cool.
Yeah.
That's where we're going.
Yeah.
And so communally, we're all trying to build stuff and like move it forward rather than me going like dragging the band through whatever my ego is.
Yeah,
Or, you know.
it's like a live negotiation between a conductor and an unruly band.
That was like, what are those? What am I trying to think of? You know, like a hostage negotiation, like a live hostage negotiation.
Yeah.
And the audience is the the person being trapped by the band.
The audience is the real hostage.
Yeah.
No, but and so like the thing about the excerpt is like I also love how modular. You've really inspired me with the modular music of Beak, because that's what I see in it. That's really fascinates me is like, and you spoke about this a little bit where it's like there's like different parts, and you didn't like when we first started. You were talking about when we first started playing, and you're like, oh, we could just do this line from bus 2 and keep it going, and then I'll bring in the bass line from this next song or whatever.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh no, it doesn't really work that well ultimately.
Right.
Like, or you figure out what does work and like what songs you can kind of dovetail into one another.
Yeah.
Over time.
Or sometimes having a part and then asking like the bass to make up their own line. And sometimes that shit's when I'm like, oh man, we almost don't need the written music.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you're just like play an ostinato, play a bass line, make up a melody, you're doing it. So like ultimately I'm like, if we have no music and we're just conducting all this stuff, like that's the ultimate in my mind. But it's almost a little out of reach, but that's like,
yeah, but there's a fair amount of the portion of the Beak sets where like, you might have us bring up a piece of music and then we don't even get to the material, or like it's just like a snippet of the material at the end and then you cut it,
Yeah, sure.
And
right. I think that's what I think. All of that should be on the table. Like in the moment, who knows? We can.
The material though, having the material there though, like that's kind of what like, I think you were talking about this with, when you were talking about Jim Black or something. It's like all of a sudden you hear like there's like jamming going on, and then all of a sudden there's like a part happens like
right.
when you're listening to it. It's like that's really magical. Is like when you bring in this like something that's obviously predetermined material, into like this what might be chaos or just like organic material.
And the other cool thing about that is like your aesthetic in that material that's come through. It's like it has a sound. I think we had some notes written down like you're using kind of simple elements like triadic inversions and then like Mixolydian modes. It's not hyper complex for its own sake, but it works all together to create something that can be at times extremely complex, like rhythmically, and then improvisation, and then people playing different parts on top of each other, but it still sounds like your music too.
Yeah.
And I think that is super important.
Some of those things like the modes or the simple chords, when you think about it, it's like because the other elements are so chaotic or kind of layered, like sometimes just having things that are like, that simple really makes a difference. Because you could write some abstract melodies, but then in the context of all that other improvising, it doesn't contrast enough with that. And I'm also into like Don Cherry and some of that music that's like pulling from like
I've got
whatever gamelan music and stuff like that. It's like there's modes involved, and it's not like
right.
What were you gonna say, Bob? Are you gonna bring up brown rice?
I was gonna bring up brown rice. Yeah. That was the first time I met you. So I met you. You were driving to LA, and that was like my first introduction to Jordan Glenn was John Cherry's Brown Rice.
Why was I going to play with Dominique and you were just in the car?
Yeah, because
we were dropping you off or something.
I moved to Oakland, and so I drove a U-Haul with my stuff, and then I was catching a ride in the band van or whatever to go back to LA to get my car.
Oh.
And you guys were
Yeah,
go play a show.
I remember not knowing you very well, and yeah, I was nervous sharing my interests. Yeah, we listened to Brown Rice. Do you know that record?
Yeah.
Mark? Yeah, it's so good. Anyways,
I could stand to know it a lot better. I've listened to it a few times recently, but
no, it's just some stuff where I'm like, wow, I don't know. It's like it transcends whatever you want to call the genre or something. It's free jazz trumpet player. No, man, he's so much more than that. And this record is just
yeah,
it sounds timeless to me because it's so doesn't sit anywhere. It's, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Certain records do that. Where you're just like, you could play this 100 years in the future, and it's gonna, have a certain thing that you're not gonna go, oh yeah, that's 1970, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
It just feels like this is universal music.
Indeed.
Well.
Alrighty.
How about that pause?
Yeah. Thank you for being.
Oh man, thanks for having me on here.
Thank you so much, dude.